for warfare. They put their trust in these international agreements they had with people who were going to guarantee their security, which is how this whole thing's happening anyway, right? But they did build some defenses, maybe as a sign that, we can't kill you, but we could hurt you. And the defenses are really cool, because it's really right in that period in human history where fortifications, forts, reach sort of their high water mark. I mean, we still build forts today, but it's nothing like it was, well, pretty much from the beginning of, human history until, well, about the time we're talking about here, because then you could base an entire defense strategy on forts. Nowadays, we have these special positions where you guard them with a fort, but if anybody decides they're going to start launching missiles and bombs and all, it doesn't matter. Forts don't hold up. That's something we learn very soon in this story. But in the 1880s, when these Belgian forts are built, this is the period where it looks like modern tech is going to make these things like space age, like something out of Star Wars, one of those planetary defenses. And they build these wonderful subterranean forts. Barbara Tuchman said, like castles sunk underground. And what they'll do is, I'm reminded of the old Godzilla films, the Monster Zero films, where you'd have some planet and it would, have a gun that would just rise up from the planet's surface, shoot, and then go back down underground. And that's what happened in these forts. And I have to remind myself how cool that is. This is like steampunk stuff, because when they're building these forts for Belgium, it's the same time that the United States and Mexico are trying to corral Geronimo and a bunch of Apaches in the American Southwest. While that's going on, the Belgians are building underground forts. And you can see some of this stuff on video if you look at the Maginot Line, which comes a generation after this, obviously. But it's the same kind of thing where it's, if you look at it from above ground, you can barely tell there's a fort there. When in fact, underground, massive concrete, little railroads underneath, moving guns and ammunition around. It's cool stuff. And the way the Belgian designer, who was one of the best in the world, built this system, he took advantage of the natural river and the slight rise in the hill and everything in there. And he built 6 big forts with 6 small forts in between. And they all cover each other's fields of fire with their guns. So, what Fort A can reach with their guns, Fort B can reach with theirs too. So they overlap. So there's never a place, in the distance anyway, where the guns can't reach the enemy. And in between these forts, the Belgians have it so that they're going to put guys in trenches. So between every fort are people, they're supported by the guns. It's this wonderful system. And then you throw more troops out, 500 yards, 1,000 yards ahead to keep enemy artillery away. And you have this system where maybe you can't win a war against someone like the Germans, but you can give them a bloody nose and maybe say, see, you really don't want to do this. The Germans aren't sure about that. And when they come into Belgium, they're kind of thinking the Belgian army's either just going to stand aside, like I said earlier, or maybe, a few shots up in the air, we protected our honor, now we're going to stand aside. And the first sign that the Germans are wrong about this is that the bridges are blown up when they get to them. The tunnels are blown up. The railroads are blown up. That maddens the Germans because they're on this tight schedule, right? So now they have to deal with at least transportation nightmares on this road system that was already going to be clogged terribly. There's your first nightmare. And then the Germans try to cross some of these rivers on the frontier in pontoons, and the Belgians start shooting at them. So the Germans put into action a group that they have designed specifically to take these forts. And this is the part of the story you have to understand where we are. When war is declared, you have like 72 hours where everybody's trying to get their heads around this idea. And at the same time, they flipped all these switches for mobilization, the doomsday device I called it, where they're calling up all these forces and everybody's, we don't have enough stuff here, and everybody's scrambling in what they assume is a race to the front lines, which they don't want to lose. Remember, what if they gave a war and only one side came? Meanwhile, though, while everybody is concentrating, it's called, their forces, the Germans have like 30,000 guys that were set up in advance to go out basically in the pre-game of the First World War, I guess you could say, and take out these forts if they have to, because these forts are blocking the roads. You cannot get to that Belgian road system that you need to get from Germany to France if you don't take the forts around a place like Liège or Namur. And so 30,000 men have been training for years for just this job. Like I said earlier, the day was called Der Tag, the day. This has been planned for a long time, and the Germans have essentially a special unit of 30,000 guys whose job it is to take out these forts if the Belgians don't stand aside and surrender them. The Belgians don't stand aside and surrender them. And in fact, the Belgians are going to teach first